Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am John Mann, Director of Education for Lakeside, and for this afternoon, I'd like to welcome Leslie Hart Davidson to Lakeside. Hart Davidson is the founder and principal designer of HDD Studios. While boasting the coolest job in the world, she helps people live better in their homes through great interior design. Leslie is an educated and credentialed designer with a bachelor's degree in interior design from Bowling Green State University and founded her design business in 2001. This talk includes her origin story of being born into a family of artisans and real estate flippers, starting a company against all odds, surviving the real estate market crash in 2009, and thriving thanks to the philosophy, design is a democracy, not a dictatorship. It will also share the four-part design language created to effectively communicate the importance of our visual experience in a room so that you can take action with your own spaces to live better in your own home. I do ask if you would please mute your cell phone ringers and help me in welcoming Leslie Hart Davidson.
There we go. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am thrilled to be able to be here with you today to talk about interior design and my unusual but very effective philosophy of design as well. So raise your hand if you love to watch HGTV or, yeah. Oh, yay, okay. I owe my entire career to HGTV. Yay. So first, I would like to introduce you to my parents. These are Jim and Mary Hart and all of their Mad Men era glory. This is about 1969. So how long have I been designing? Since about birth. They were real estate flippers when I was young, so from the time I was about this high, I would carry buckets of wallpaper paste from my mama, and I'd be right there with my dad as he was using all of his tools. And I still do that to this day. Absolutely love it. Does not only my parents, but these are my grandparents. That's Thelma and Glenn Durr. What a handsome devil he was. And they were both creatives as well. So my grandfather would meticulously paint the gold lettering on all the shop windows in the 1920s. And he was an amazing furniture refurbisher as well. So I still have a piece in my home that my grandfather, who died well before I was born, that he picked out of the trash in 1917 and refurbished it. It still sits in my home today. Now, Thelma was creative as well. Her great-grandfather was the traveling tailor for the Barnum and Bailey Circus and made all of the costumes for General Tom Thumb, which are in a really cool museum in upstate New York. So I come by this honestly, and I've known since I was teeny, teeny, tiny what I wanted to do. And it's nice to be able to say when you're that young, yes, I want to be a designer. Yes, I want to help people live better in their homes. I want to make beautiful things. So going to Bowling Green State University, where they had a fantastic design program, made me very happy. But keeping in mind, this was the early 90s. When I graduated, two things did not exist: the internet or HGTV, or cell phones too. The young ones always go, what? How did you survive? Oh, landline, fun. So not a lot of options for me in the residential design world. So instead, I relied upon my sewing knowledge, because I'm a fifth-generation seamstress, and worked at Joann's for about 7 years and had a great career. So I was still able to use that creativity, learned all about the business world, and after that, I got headhunted by Target. That was not good for my soul. So because it wasn't creative, while I did learn quite a bit about management and that sort of thing, it just didn't feel my passion. So instead, I went to Stickley Furniture, as husband and I lived in upstate New York. And it is there that my business was born. Because if you had told 18-year-old me when I started Bowling Green, one day you're going to own a company, and you will be on national stages, and you'll be on TV, and you will write books, I would have laughed and laughed and laughed some more. And yet here we are. So going to Stickley and being a showroom manager for them. It was a really interesting job. I got back into the creative side of it, had more management experience thanks to Target. So when the gals would come to me, because they knew that I was a seamstress, and there was a workroom that they used, and it's back in the day, so they would take a fax and sketch out a drapery that a client wanted. It's like very high-end kind of drapery stuff, and they'd fax it. And the gals would come to me near crying because the fax would have just a big X through it, like, no soup for you. And they would look at it and go, Leslie, why are they doing this? And I said, well, because you are asking them to defy gravity with this design. So I thought, okay, let me just teach you how to specify this so that the fabric will behave like you would want it to. And I started teaching them that, and after a while, they started coming to me saying, can you make it? Can you just take this home and make it? Because the fax would have just a okay, I guess I can. No soup for you. And after doing that several times, my husband at the time was away for the summer working at IBM, and I would tell him how to specify this so that the fabric will behave like you want it to. And I started teaching them that, and after a while, they started coming to me saying, "Is it? Can you? It's like a recording playback or something." Okay, I guess I can. And after doing that several times, my husband at the time, live playback, fun. And I would tell him how to specify this so that got it? I don't know. Maybe? Okay. So after taking several of those design jobs, it's still doing it. They're figuring it out. After taking several of those jobs, husband sent me the most beautiful card in the mail, and it had a dragonfly on the front of it, if you've been wondering about my logo. And in it he said, you know what, just start a business. I will always support you, and I love that you're being creative and that you get to do this, so just start it. So I created HDD Studios, and that was in 2001. And I didn't realize where all it would take me, but I got so busy with all of those jobs that I left Stickley as a manager and went part-time to Pottery Barn so that I could dip my toe into the water of going full-time. And I was able to do that when, that was in New York, and then in 2004, husband got wooed by Michigan State, and we moved to Michigan, and I was able to do the business full-time for the first time in a brand new community. But one thing that was important as I started the business, and I went from just making drapery to actual client work. And so one of the designers at Stickley said, go see these very nice folks. They're interested in a bunch of stuff, like little tasks that she didn't want to take on because it didn't involve selling furniture. So I walked in, and it's just a super nice couple. And the wife took my coat and walked off to the closet, and the husband pulled me aside. He's like, come here. You're not gonna make my wife cry, are you? I didn't plan on it. Why do you ask that? And he said, well, last week we had a designer from the place down the street, which was a very she, oh, everything's beautiful and so expensive. And that designer walked in, and without greeting the clients, just looked at everything and said, that is hideous, that is ugly, burn it or I'm not working with you. Now, what that designer did not know, didn't care to ask either, is that he pointed to all of the wife's recently deceased mother's possessions that she had just inherited. So it broke her heart. In that very moment, I looked at him and thought, okay, this is an opportunity for me here, because if other designers are going to be dictators, I'm going to do the opposite. So I said, sir, I promise you, design is a democracy, not a dictatorship. And I will listen to every single one of the requests that you have and make sure that it looks fabulous. So from that moment, I established that I was going to be different in an era of, these are like Candace Olsen, early days of HGTV, where you just were supposed to listen to your designer, right? But a client of mine, a couple years after that, said, you know, you're kind of like the magical unicorn of designers because you listen and you aren't in it for the portfolio work, so I'm not doing things like to the client. But the other opportunity with that was showing them the generations of things that I had come from. So it was hard for me to dictate when there was such an opportunity to create in the same way. So that's my tool room in the studio. My dad would be so proud. And then some other things that I have created as a result of taking that time. These are Michigan license plates. The oldest one is from 1917 that was on a fire engine. Fun. And that's just all upcycled scrap that I had laying around. Grandpa would be pleased with that, all the upholstery. So being able to create these things for clients is part of the whole magical unicorn experience, especially when they give me very precious antiques and say, go to town, because it's not like I can run to the store and get another one if I mess it up. So there's a lot of pressure there, but also a lot of opportunity for expression, for artwork, for going above and beyond, and bringing in the client to the process of creating artwork that is special to them. I think about democratic design through prepositions, and this is why. The dictators want to design at you or to you. It's like they're doing something, and they're forcing you to have that expression, even if it doesn't fit your personality or your lifestyle or your home or the style of the home. But the idea of designing with and for is a gentler and more inclusive experience that allows my clients to be so much happier with that design. So when husband and I first moved here in 2004, it was with the understanding that the sale on the house in New York would go through and I would have a little pile of cash for some marketing money to get started, because I knew nobody in this giant new town that was filled with 17 other designers. And not only did the sale of the house fall through, so I had zero monies. Husband and I had tried for about 10 years to start a family. We're unable to. And God said, oh, hold up, got one other way, and we were able to adopt. Without even, I'm getting chills just still listening to that. She's 19 now, and what an absolute blessing to have her. But we found out that she was coming at the same time. So not only no marketing money, but going to be new mom and in an area with heavy competition where I didn't know anybody. So I was throwing a little pity party for myself in the car as I was driving around town trying to figure out, like, what am I gonna do? And I noticed, was driving by, and it was the Okemos Library, and I thought, I'm just gonna teach. I'm gonna try to get a name for myself out there. So I walked into the library after finding like a gum wrapper in the car, and I wrote down, like jotted down just a couple ideas. Presented myself to the head librarian who did all of the seminars, and I said, I would love to teach a class here called 5 Secrets to Successful Interior Design. And she's like, ooh, that sounds fantastic. Let's set that up for 2 weeks from now, and we will do all the advertising for you, and we'll do all the printouts and things for you. I'm like, yes, that is awesome. And then she said, so what are the secrets? I said, well, it's a secret because I hadn't written them yet. Oops. But 2 weeks later, when I had the seminar, the room was packed. I had fantastic questions afterwards. Came up with 5 great secrets, and there were several folks from the audience who said, hey, do you do consultations? As a matter of fact, I do. That's fantastic. And so several people hired me from that, and then they started telling their friends, and they started telling their friends, and I did a whole library series, and all of a sudden, I became that designer who teaches. So that's how I built the reputation around town, and because I would teach it and not gatekeep all the information. Another client, after I had taken care of her, she said, well, I had one of the others who was like the most established one in the community, and she said, I kept asking her questions about, like, you say this goes together, but why? Can you explain why? And the other designer said, oh, you don't need to know that. You just need to know that it's going to be on my website and it's beautiful. but it's her home. So I do not gatekeep any information. I gladly give and teach and educate and inform so that you can live better in your homes. Now, a couple years after I started the library series, I found an amazing property and the farmhouse that's 150 years old, and there's a cute little 900 square foot studio on the same property. So I have a 17-step commute to work every day, and I love it. So the studio really is a magical place, and it's full of creativity, and I love absolutely everything about it. And I wanted to fill it with students. My mama mentored for many, many years, and I had the opportunity in 2007, so just like 2 years after I started the whole library series, had an opportunity to take an intern from Michigan State. And my first intern was Katie, and I love Katie because she would constantly say, why? Why are you doing that? Leslie, why? Why? Why are we doing it this way? And I would have to stop and explain, and very often, I would understand that she was asking why because it didn't make sense now that I was trying to teach somebody else or create a repeatable process in the business. And because she asked why, it made me rethink all of the ways that I was working and how to be more efficient with it. And she was so talented that she said, you know, I'm graduating next semester, so why don't I find you a replacement? Like, oh, okay. So then Katie started training the next generation, and then that generation would train the next. And this is generation semester 30, I think. That was several years ago. But I call them my babies. I would love to have had a bigger family, but I'm blessed with one. But these are my babies as well, because I have so many of them, especially Katie. They keep up and they contact me and let me know how they're doing in their careers, and so many of them now have their own interns and have paid that whole idea of democratic design forward. So you see the orange tabletop there? One part of the democratic process that I instilled in my babies is that we all have opinions and have equal opportunity to express those opinions and help make decisions in the studio. So each new generation of interns, so each fall when the new one started, they got to choose the next color of tabletop. So there's paint about that thick on the top of it, but it was always a special decision for that. And democratic design, even though I own the business, meant often I would get overruled. I really, really didn't want that gray paint in the entryway of the studio, but I got overruled. And you know what? I kind of love it. Now I kind of love it. So the babies said, you know, you enjoy teaching so much and you like to do the library series, but when we're at the Home and Garden Show and have the booth there, why don't you just go ahead and teach more stuff? So that created a content monster machine where I was able to come up with so many cool different ideas and being able to share that information. And the babies would help create props. They would do research for me. One of the babies spent like 2 weeks just researching lighting and used it for a class as well. But it was amazing, the backing that I had from the babies. That led to another interesting thing, because during one of the home and garden shows, as I started going into the Grand Rapids market in addition to the Lansing market, the publicist for the home show said, hey, would you do me a favor and go on the local morning TV show and talk about the seminars so that we can get more people in? Like, what's that, an opportunity to teach even more people about democratic design? Okay, I'll take it. So that turned into, well, let's see, from 2008 until the pandemic. But I was absolutely hooked on live TV. That is quite a stretch for me. 90 seconds to bring all the props and to set everything up. And I am not the most graceful person, so the number of times I knocked things over with like 2 seconds to air, that was fun. So being able to do those TV shows and those segments gave me an opportunity for a national stage as well. And democratic design isn't just for my babies, all the interns, and isn't just for clients. Sometimes it's for other designers as well. So I am a featured speaker at the Kitchen and Bath Industry Show each year, and being able to teach my colleagues about democratic design, even though it breaks some of their brains, it's lovely to have that collegial bit too. Having done so many of those seminars, what was important is that I was able to share and on an even bigger stage. So Remodeling Your House Without Killing Your Spouse was born in 2014 because I had friends who would watch the clips that I would post on TV, or they would say, oh, I'd love to come to your seminar, but I'm like in Texas. And I said, okay, well, I think I can remedy this. And I had enough content from all the seminars that I had written, and also enough post-mortem meetings with the babies after we would finish projects. There's a span of 18 months where 2 clients got divorced in the middle of a remodel. I swear it wasn't me. It's not me. I'm not the jinx. But I watched the green flags and the red flags that showed up every single time in the process, and I started to identify, oh, here's what's gone wrong, or here's how I can prevent it. So I put all of this content into Remodeling Your House Without Killing Your Spouse. And raise your hand if you've ever contemplated homicide during home improvement. Yeah, see? Know your audience, yeah. But it was important for me to educate people, and this has saved a lot of people time and money and expense and all of those things. And I tell them up front, I'm more expensive than a marriage counselor. So it's important that they think about all those things first. 2 years after that, I had so many clients who were either empty nesters, they were downsizing, they were changing their homes in some way. And it wasn't until right before they moved that they would come to me to say, hey, can you freshen this up a little bit? And inevitably, each time I would finish all that, they would look at the space and go, oh, I could have done this 5 years ago and I really would have enjoyed it more. So they only get 30 days to enjoy it before they move out rather than, yeah. So the idea of putter offers came to mind because I watched a lot of clients who did not take action with their spaces, even though something was terribly wrong with it or they were unhappy in the space. So I put together all of those, and not only the ideas of which kinds of putter offers, because there's Pinterest paralysis, or there is, I don't know how to do it, so I just won't do it, or so many other options, and then the steps to move forward with that. I love cooking as much as I love design, so my pandemic baby was Food is Love, which has an entire section in it about kitchen design. Because I've had, in my college days, really awful, sad kitchens that didn't function well, but I still was able to make amazing meals in it. And now I have an awesome kitchen, and the quality of food that comes out of it is the same. It's just the experience that you get from it. Raise your hand if you know of Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential. You know that book? This is the design version of that. As I've had so many very, very interesting clients, and some are just head-shaking, and some are hilarious, and some are just heartwarming. So being able to gather all those together to be able to help folks learn from those experiences and live better in their homes is important. And finally, on the sharing of information, having the YouTube video so that those folks in Texas who couldn't come to the seminar and creating content like that, awesome. So just another display of sharing the process of design and democratic design rather than gatekeeping. Now, putting that into action for clients, the idea of democratic design, a couple examples of that. Now, Grandma taught me how to quilt, and this is a jean pocket pillow that I created for a client. So my client, Corinne, who was well known in the community because her 2 teenage daughters were killed in a car accident. And they were both gymnasts and cheerleaders, very popular at school. They had a giant friend group. Corinne decided to bring all of her babies, all of the rest of the kids, together for a meeting in her home. And she said, look, I've got some insurance money. I don't want to lose you guys. I don't want you to stop coming over. I want to create a space so that you will come over for the next 3 years. They're like, bet, okay. So I got to help her transform what was the attached garage into a family and community space so that all of the cheerleaders could come and be there. And one day during the project, Corinne came to my studio and she had a big paper bag. And I was like, ooh, would you bring me lunch? And she said, nope, not quite. Turned it over and dumped out all of her girls' jeans on the table. And she said, you sew, right? I'm like, yeah. She said, do something with these. And then turned around and left. With other fabric, if I mess something up, I can run to the store and buy more. This is all she had. Had no idea what I was going to do with it, but we had just selected her furniture, and I had been looking for toss pillows anyway. So we very, very carefully found all the little pockets that would sort of line up or be interesting, and she had them separate. So one was Emily's, one was Chelsea's in the pile, so I made sure that they were both represented. I will tell you that anyone who ever says to me, who tries to denigrate the idea of interior design, or go, oh, you're just a designer. No, I help people live better in their homes. Corinne took that pillow to therapy with her for the next 2 years, and she would hug it. And when the girls saw it, when they came over, they said, I remember when Emily wore that to the dance. Or see that ribbon one that's Chelsea got her butt caught in class and everybody laughed. It's not just a toss pillow, it's more. My client Jan, who I accidentally turned into, at age 78, a real estate mogul, because after her husband passed away, this was maybe 11 years ago, and he never wanted her to spend any money whatsoever on the house. It was a very nice home. He worked for GM and was an engineer. It was a lovely home, but nothing creative was done to it. And after he passed away, she said, I'm ready to do something fun. I'm like, I'm with you, let's do it. So this was the third space that we did, because she had a little condo closer to me, and this one was closer to work for her husband. Being able to see that growth from her, and because I taught her so much about design, she was able to use that new language that I gave her and say, okay, honey, this time for this space, here's what I want. And then she ended up selling that condo and buying a place in Florida, and we did all of that together too. And then she bought an Airbnb, and then she bought a second one that I've been able to do too. But because she loved design as much as I did, and I taught her the language, she's now able to communicate with me and say, okay, this is the style we're doing this time. I'm like, okay, awesome. You may have seen one of the seminar titles, which was Taste of Her Own Medicine. Remodeled my own kitchen in 2018. Before the remodel, this is the farmhouse, and what a typical party, because we had parties all the time, what that would look like. So everybody's like, yeah, and if I'm carrying something hot through there, I'm like, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, and then the dog is in the way, and all of the things, right? So I had to think very carefully about the use of the space, and I had to interview the whole family. I even interviewed party guests when they would come over and said, tell me what kind of experience you would like if I remodel this or if I move things around. And they're like, oh yeah. So I interviewed everybody who would ever use the space. And that democratic process led to, yeah, so much more open, much, much more. So listening to the suggestion of moving one of the pieces of furniture that was an antique that had previously been blocking both of the spaces, it didn't even occur to me. And my daughter looked at it and said, Mom, just move it over there. I'm like, ooh, I didn't even think about that. But I got overruled and I listened. It was awesome. It's from the other angle as well. It's one of my favorite projects ever. Now, democratic design isn't just involving clients. It involves builders and installers and other folks as well. Generally, the trim carpenters are the more creative of the installation crew. They're pretty cool when I say, hey, can we do it this way? Or I got a really wacky request for you. Normally they're good about it. But Jack the builder had been creating the same type of home for 40 years, and he did not like me because I made his brain hurt very much. It's like, why would you do it that way? Because the client would like it that way. And my client, Susie, who interestingly used to own my farmhouse, and now I'm on, project number 4 with her, she would go up to Jack and say, now, Jack, you just have to listen to her, and I'm paying you, so you have to do it. And she's like, yes, ma'am. So having those experiences with builders and others who do not understand democratic design in that process is a really interesting interaction. But all of them were quick to take credit for how awesome it was when other people walked through. Yes. Now, creating concessions between partners who live in a space, that's an interesting part of democratic design too. Now, a client that I had helped years ago, he wanted to build an English pub in his basement. And the wife was like, do you have to? And he said, yes, it would make me very happy. And I want a beautiful live edge table. And she said, all right, fine. But I'm going to take all of the river rocks from up north, and it has to be incorporated into the table. He's like, okay, deal. So being able to create beautiful things that are an expression of both of the users of the space is really important. Okay. The idea of democratic design, I can break down into 5 different sections, essentially. And they are all going to be useful to you because I'm going to give you a language not only to use for trying to describe your style or have a conversation with your partner or anyone else in the family, but it will also make you a better human if I do my job correctly today. So the first pillar, discover your TNAT. What is a TNAT? I think Tina Fey for this. Tell me if it's a thing or not a thing. There's a game that I play on my Facebook page every Tuesday, so we call it TNAT Tuesday. And I put up a photo of a space or an item or decor, something like that. And I will describe in neutral ways exactly what it is and then ask people to vote. Is this a thing or not a thing? So it was a fun game, but one thing I found after a while is that I could tell more about people's personal design styles if they played this game, and if at the beginning of a project they would show me their own TNAT. So I made it homework that was really interesting. And here's the idea. If you flip through Pinterest, Houzz, or even actual magazines, and you land upon something, so this is especially helpful if you don't know what your design style is, or you don't know what you like or don't. But if you flip through a magazine and you see something and go, ooh, I like that, and then keep pointing to the ones that you think, yes, I like this one, or no, don't ever give me this. It's helpful because as much as I would love to be able to take clients' brains and just peek inside and go, what are you thinking? I'm not able to do that. But if I see enough of those, if you show me 15 photos of things that you like and things that you don't like, I can sense the pattern to them, and I have a much better idea of what style it is that you like. So some patterns that show up, there's one gal, and even though the styles are very different, each one of the spaces had tons of natural light in it. And the ones that she didn't like were the dark, moody, dramatic colors. Or there's a gentleman, and I found the theme was simply the color green. He had a negative association with it from childhood, and it was just completely subjective, and that's totally fine. But I learned to stay away from the green palette. So putting these together and being able to show your partner if you were trying to create a design style or settle on something for a new space is extremely helpful. Because sometimes your labels for styles or decor or something like that can be incorrect. So if you're not using the right terminology and you tell your builder, as one of my clients did, for example, in my laundry room, I would like a fluorescent fixture. And the builder said, are you sure? And she said, yes, I want a fluorescent fixture. Positive. Yep, that's what I want. Do it. Just buy one and put it in. So when she walks in and sees the icky long tubes, she's like, what is that? And he said, that's the fluorescent fixture. And she said, no, I meant the fluorescent one. She meant LED. So the importance of the thing, not a thing homework is that we can take the language and the labels out of it. So if you're just like caveman, oh, that, it makes it much easier. All right, are you ready to learn a new language that will help you win arguments? That's so much fun. That's just a little naughty. I created this language for remodeling your house without killing your spouse because I watched a lot of clients fight with each other in front of me. I'm like, guys, remember, I'm more expensive than a marriage counselor. But they were fighting because they weren't able to use their words correctly or to define what it was that they did or did not like about a space. So if you have ever walked into a space and thought, oh, I don't like it, but can't put your finger on exactly why, or if you are shown a space and go, oh, it's just so pretty. I can't tell you what I love. It's just perfect. It all works together. In both of those cases, either the crap elements were completely off, or they were so perfectly blended that it's just like chef's kiss. So, this is an acronym that stands for contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. And it is the balance of these 4 elements that makes for great style of any room that you walk into, no matter what style at all. So for all of these, I want you to think about Goldilocks for me, okay? And remember, her porch was just right in the middle. If you go too far to one end, then it's just super boring. Yeah. But in those elements, if you go too far the other way after the porch is just right, then like, it's just visually jarring. So where do we want to be? Right in the middle, at our happy, happy medium. Think about that scale for me as we look at this photo. I'm about to assault your eyes. Yeah. So what is your initial reaction? Spider webs, yes. Yeah. If you didn't have your contacts or glasses on and walked into that space, what is remember how clumsy I am? I would not come out unscathed from that situation. But you see how your reaction was like, oh, just way too much, because the crap elements are way off. Now we're gonna look at this again after I teach you the language. Let's look at this one too. White kitchens are so popular right now. So I'm sure that there's somebody out there that thinks, oh, I love that. And that's their 50% of the Goldilocks happiness. But to others, they may be having a little nap right now. Yep, that is a possibility. Okay, so let's go through each of these elements so I can teach you this crap language so you can diagnose and treat each space. Now, the first element in crap, our design language, is contrast. Contrast highlights differences of color, texture, and size to show visual interest in a room. So if there's no contrast, then it's like super boring. So where does your eye go in this Pottery Barn catalog photo? The pillows, exactly, because there is a high color contrast between the neutral sofa and the neutral walls, and your eye goes right there. Now, if you are a color coward and believe that beige is a color, it's not in the rainbow, it's not a color, then you want to think instead about the element of texture. So if you have a tactile contrast in texture, so if you were like, nope, can't do the dark pillows, but if you could do a pillow that's closer to the sofa color, but if it's a chenille or corduroy or velvet, there's that tactile contrast that will at least give your eye something to hold on to. Yeah. And the size is important too, because I have so many clients who do rogue furniture shopping, and they are in that giant 100,000 square foot showroom, right? And they walk in and say, oh, that sectional is fantastic, and then it won't fit through the door. So it looks like it's on steroids. And the opposite problem in folks that have like giant great room spaces, and it's all like big and open, and they get cute, teeny tiny little furniture, and it looks like a dollhouse furniture. So the contrast in size there, and keeping that in mind, is very important. All right, so that is our first element. Our second element is repetition. Repetition asserts a theme through multiples, but I will caution that themes are for parties, not for rooms. So in this catalog example, we have a nautical theme. And we are in violation of what I call the 70-30 rule. If more than 70% of the thematic elements in a space, and by the thematic elements, I mean the furniture and the decor and the architecture and all the other goodies, right? If more than 70% are related, then it's like beating you over the head, the idea of it, right? But if fewer than 30% is linked, then you walk in and go, what are you trying to do? So where do we want to be with our repetition? In the middle, in the Goldilocks happiness. So this is overboard, right? There's dinghies, there's buoys, there's a porthole window, come on. So perhaps if we didn't have the red and white stripe, if we lose a pillow or two, maybe the back wall could be a different color, lots of other options to get it to 50% instead of the nearly 100 that we have here. The next element in CRAP, our design language, is alignment. Alignment shows hierarchy through placement because some things just need to be more important than others. I have so many clients who take the time to put things on the walls, but they either, I find, have Indiana decor or Royal Caribbean decor. Here's the Indiana decor, and I lived there for 5 years, so I'm allowed to say this. So having all of your items at the same eye level all around the room is like driving through Indiana, just nothing, it's just flat, right? I'm allowed to say that. But the opposite is true as well. So if you have one here and one here, one here, one here, one here, it'll make you seasick, right? So what do we want to do with our alignment? Right in the middle with Goldilocks. If you can allow your eye to stop and rest on a particular item before gently moving on to the next, and moving on to the next, then that is perfect. Now there's another spatial feature to that. So as horizon decor, but perimeter decor. So many of my clients, when I first walk into their space and I see the sofa is placed on the longest wall closest to the front door because that's where the movers left it. And I asked one gal, like, did you just move in? She's like, no, I've been here for 15 years. Like, have you ever moved the furniture? And she said, I can do that? Yes, ma'am, you can. Angles can be your friend. So as long as you obey the traffic pattern and can swoop in and out without bumping your knee or dropping something, and if it's safe to exit as well, you're good to go. So you don't have to have everything shoved at 90-degree angles all around the wall. You can pull it out on an angle. You can create a new traffic pattern. There are lots of options. Moving furniture is free, as long as you don't hurt yourself. Yeah. All right, and the last element in CRAP, our design language, proximity. Now that's a mouthful. Proximity shows similarity among sets of items through location. What it means, though, is that stuff has to work. Having a non-functional space where if you have folks come in and you have a beautiful white marble countertop in your kitchen, and you have a friend with a glass of juice or wine or something that's colored, and she's about to set it down, you go, oh, no, please, oh, let me get you a coaster. Don't set that there. Or if there's a piece of furniture, like, oh, no, don't, it's an antique, don't sit there. So the fact that Joanna Gaines has created a monster of young families who want white sofas and they have toddlers. It's not ideal, not ideal. So it's either slip covered and you can wash it all the time, but being able to have beautiful pieces in your home that you're not afraid to use is fantastic, because I want you living in a home, not a museum. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that first photo there. And with our new language of contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity, can you tell me what the first thing is that you would do with that photo to bring contrast back to the happy medium of the porridge? Which marble would you take away? The walls, perfect, yes. That would bring it down to a much happier Goldilocks situation. What % of repetition are we right now? Absolutely, an overwhelming amount. Overwhelming. It's funny, I've done this seminar many times teaching this particular photo, and each time I see something new in it. I never knew that there were slippers down on the bottom because there's so much else going on. I'm like, wait, what? There's a new thing. Yeah. So do you see how this new language gives you an opportunity instead of saying, oh no, but instead, oh, we can lower the contrast by, or give it some contrast whatsoever, by simply removing the marble from the back wall. And hey, you'd save about $20,000 too. Score. Okay. Let's think about this kitchen then. How much contrast is there in this existing kitchen? None. Very little. What element would you put in there to create some contrast? Lots of options, whether it's baby steps or something like bold and powerful. Backsplash, yep. Now, if you were color coward, even a white subway tile with a light grout to it would create that tactile contrast. The front of the island would be an opportunity too. And again, even if it had beadboard that was painted white, that would be enough visual contrast. But if you wanted to add some color, because right now the only color comes from the hydrangeas in the sink, and that makes me sad, very sad. Changing the light fixtures. Yep, so the shades on those would be amazing. The hood vent, yeah, painting that a different color, or even if it was metal or something like that. Those look like terribly uncomfortable bar stools that only somebody under the age of 15 would enjoy sitting on. So maybe something more comfortable or even upholstered. Bringing in that extra contrast and texture would be lovely. So do you see the value of this new language? Excellent. I will have a QR code at the end so you can scan that and then have access to like all of these slides and stuff for you. Okay, now, if contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity, if that language is how we see a space, then our next language is how we feel and experience a space, and that is called talc. So in my second book, It's Not Your Room, It's You, I go through all of these. So let's take a look, because HGTV and Property Brothers in particular, this is from a Property Brothers set, they are masters of visually creating really stunning spaces. But every time I watch that, I always think, yeah, they're gonna hate that in about a week. Because part of it is impractical to be in. So visually, do we find this place, or this setting, this kitchen, living room combo, do we find it visually pleasing because it aligns with all of our crap elements? Pretty good, right? Hold that thought. All right, so talc is texture, acoustics, lighting, and convection. It's these four elements that help us experience the space. And in my book, Food is Love, I talk about, particularly in kitchens, and I wanted to pull the content from that book because the kitchens are so popular and we spend so much time in them. I want them to be a practical, useful space that you enjoy being in. So these are some slides from my book, and I used my own kitchen as a reference for that. So texture, any body bit that fits or experiences like sitting, the upholstery, the texture of the countertop, down to those things. So how cleanable is it? What decisions are you making to ensure that, like, if you sit down, it doesn't like leave the like vinyl seat or something, so it's hard to be comfortable in it, or you would sweat in it, something like that. But choosing appliances that are easy to clean and care for, and choosing countertops that you don't have to go, oh, no, don't set that there. Choosing the right texture for that is important. Now, acoustics, this is one of my favorite. So in my farmhouse, this is a view from the balcony looking into what I lovingly call Starbucks. It's my little seating area, and then the kitchen itself. One would think that from this angle and given that volume of space that it would be really loud in there. But it is not, because I paid attention to the offsets of acoustics that happen. So anytime you increase the volume of space, you have to create an ability for the decor or the finishes to absorb that sound. Otherwise, it would just bounce everywhere and you'd never have a private conversation, right? So having the rug in the space, the 4 upholstered chairs, even the artwork on the wall, and all of the upholstered chairs around the island as well. Every single thing in there will absorb the sound. And think about it this way for me. If an item repels water, it will bounce that sound. So the more upholstery or textiles, even like canvas artwork, things like that, that will help reconcile the acoustic deficit if you have an open concept space like that. Now, lighting is fascinating to me, and I guarantee if you walk into a space and you do not feel comfortable in it, and it makes you sad or depressed, or there's just something like Colonel Jessup like interrogating you about it, if all the other elements of the crap language and the talc language are good, and yet you still feel uncomfortable in the space, it's the lighting. It's either a lack of it, because having too little of it is just as bad as having too much of it. But first I will talk about the layers of lighting. So having the general lighting, which is basically the safety. Flip on the switch, you can walk safely into the room. But we always go above and beyond that because I'm extra. But ambient lighting is sort of just mood lighting. So these would be things that you could put on dimmers. My sweet little owl lamps on the buffet there. And then task lighting, because I don't want you to hurt yourself in bathrooms or kitchens ever. So having the appropriate amount of task lighting, really, really important. So not only are there the layers of light, but there's also the quantity of it. So again, too much makes you feel like you are being interrogated, and too little is absolutely dangerous and depressing. But the quality is one thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Doesn't that look very much like a nutrition label? Yes. So in the way that the FDA requires nutrition labels on every food packaging, the Department of Energy requires these usage labels on every package of light bulbs. It is fascinating. And the scale down at the bottom there between warm and cool, so in degrees and temperature degrees, right? And the scale of Kelvin. So about 2,700 is warm. It's like a sunrise. It's beautiful. It makes my heart so happy. And people have very subjective relationships to color temperature. But mine in particular, I want it as warm as it can be because it feels like a hug. If you go further on the scale to cool, then you're at like 5,000 degrees. And it's more like standing outside on a beautiful bright summer day. It has a blue tint to it, which is really bad for women as we put on makeup. So, like, why do I look like a cadaver? I swear, I got a lot of sleep last night. But paying attention to that and choosing the right light bulb. And my daughter and I like to play a game, and anytime we go into restaurants or other homes and stuff, and she will go, Mom, 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 look at that fixture. And there will be one bulb that's a different color than all the others in there. Having that consistency is very important, but paying attention to how you react to those color temperatures, important as well. One of the coolest things that's come out recently is the recessed can lights that have a switch in it so you can take it from the warmest to the coolest or put it right in the middle to make everybody happy. But you can create that mood in the space, not only with the quantity of light that you have and the layers of them, but the quality of the light too. All right. And last element in talc, convection, how air moves about the space. That is an industrial hood vent that I had to buy given the volume of the space. And the hood vents, if you do not use them properly, and mine I have to let run a good 20 minutes before I start cooking, because otherwise the air exchange will not get the smells of cooking out of the house. And my teenage daughter will come to the balcony and go, "What are you cooking? It smells like that up here," if I don't turn on the hood vent. So very important to move that about the space. So it's not only the cooking smells, but also the temperature of the space. Because there's nothing worse than walking into a space, and it's beautiful, but you sit there the whole time and you're just, yeah, it's really pretty in here, or you're just sitting there sweating because there's not enough convection and air moving about the space. So having a giant fan is really helpful. So how air moves about the space is convection. Let's go back to the Property Brothers. Talk to me about texture and the waffle weave vinyl seats on those bar stools. If you have on shorts, how much fun is it going to be to get up from that? You get a little imprint there, huh? Yeah. There is a hood vent I see over the stove, but and that looks like a very large space. So how much is that sofa going to smell like fried chicken tomorrow? Quite a bit, quite a bit. So maybe a convection issue if the hood vent isn't used properly. How about the acoustics? The upholstery of the sofa, that's going to help quite a bit. I see that there are a couple of upholstered chairs over in the dining area, and there's a rug underneath the sofa, but if there were a runner back behind that island, that would be really helpful. And other sorts of canvas artwork to sort of absorb that sound. Because the danger in a space like that, when it's open concept, especially like entirely open living areas with bedrooms right off of there, you can never have another private conversation. And you can't raid the fridge at 3 a.m. Because people will hear you all throughout the house. So being able to mitigate that sound by absorbing more things is important. Okay, so you now have command of the talc and crap languages to help you diagnose and treat any room, any style, and win some arguments too. Okay, next up in the pillars of democratic design, I want you to examine your decor trifecta. I was once, I had a sinus cold, was really sick, and was just lounging, watching HGTV one day. And I'd taken some cold medicine, and Fixer Upper was on, so I was watching Joanna and Chip. And I started to get a little drowsy, and I thought, oh, it's okay, I'll just close my eyes for a few minutes and I'll catch the end of this episode. And I said it just started. And woke up and thought, oh, good, yeah, I saw the end of it. And then I looked at my watch. I'm like, I've been asleep for 5 hours. And yet I thought it was the same episode because everything they do is the same. It's all cookie cutter. You deserve more than cookie cutter. You are individual humans with a fascinating backstory, and I'm sure lots of interesting things to share in your home as far as creating personality. Often when I go into clients' homes, it's sort of like an archaeological expedition for me, and I can go, that's Home Goods. Pottery Barn circa 2018. World Market. And they're like, yes, how did you know? Like, it's just my job to do that. I'm like the Indiana Jones of decor. So being able to differentiate yourself is important because remodeling your house without killing your spouse, I equate the oversimplification of the palette and the stripping of personality from decor. It's like backing up a tanker truck full of a bit of gray or beige paint and just like hosing the whole thing down. Being able to create that contrast and introduce some personality into your space is critical. Just buying stuff that is mass-produced and millions of other people have is not enough because it isn't a true reflection of your decor trifecta. So before I explain that, I have a little test. Ooh, didn't know you'd be tested today. Called the fire test. So when I want to gauge how much personalized decor, how much opportunity there is for clients, I offer them the fire test. And here are the rules. Your home is on fire. You have 90 seconds to grab the things that are most important to you that are not replaceable by insurance. Your family's safe, the dogs are safe, you have all the insurance papers, so don't worry about that sort of thing. But you have 90 seconds. What do you grab? Antiques? Recipes? Photos? Are they shoved in a box underneath the bed? What else? Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Yep. So a picture of Jesus, bentwood rocker, and the Afghan. And that says a lot about your personality and what's important to you. So that is, here's the cool thing about this test. There are some folks that go, oh, there's so many. I can't. I wouldn't know where to start. And you are fortunate to have that many belongings that are that special to you. Good for you. And there are others that go, I had one client that I helped in Saratoga. She built a house just to be able to come to the races. That was her third home. She had two others in like Boca and somewhere out west. I'm like, good for you, yay. But she told me at one point, oh, the house could just burn down and I'd just collect the check and build again. I'm like, oh, because there was nothing of interest in there for her. And when I walked around and said, oh, that's a beautiful vase, can you tell me about that? And she's like, oh, I have the same one at the other place. I'm like, oh, okay. Because it looked like something that perhaps she and her partner would have purchased while traveling internationally. I was hoping for a cool story. I was like, nope, it's a replica. I got the same one at the other house. Like, oh, okay. And even the pictures of her kids and stuff, they were absolute copies of everything else. So there was nothing of interest. If I had asked her, can you point to something and tell me a story? No. Okay. Telling stories is important, though. Your decor trifecta explains who you are, where you come from, and what you believe in. This is on the thing, too, so you get all of this. It doesn't have to be expensive for you to find ways to create that personalized decor. So let me show you a couple of examples of them. It's just a rendering of that my graphic designer did for me of a few things that are really important. When my dad passed away in 2005, I inherited a stack of Popular Science and Popular Mechanics magazines about this high. And they sat in my dining room for 3 months because I just couldn't, right? And I noticed one day when I was sitting there and I looked at the cover, it was from like 1967. And there was it caught my eye because of the writing that was on there. And there was an article from Senator Robert Kennedy that said, how can we make our cars safer? And I flipped through and read the article, and it was a balloon-like device that would inflate on impact, and seat belts, woohoo! So I'm like, this is really interesting. And I noticed as I closed it, my dad's mailing label with his name on it was still on the bottom. And then I looked at it more and realized that it was beautiful with the brick of the dining room. And in my world, if anything sits still long enough, I will frame it. So I framed it, and it hangs on the wall. And now when people come over, they're like, oh, that is cool. Is that an original? Like, yeah, that was my dad's. Let me tell you about him. And it's a great opportunity to have a story around decor. It cost me a $5 frame. I love to eat, and I love to cook, and husband is in the same boat. Absolutely loved it. So right after our daughter was born, my brother-in-law said, hey, if you guys want to get away, she was maybe 9 months old, so why don't you guys just go take a little vacation? I'll come up and I'll watch Lily. I'm like, okay. So we looked around for some good flight deals and discovered that Vegas, in the week between Christmas and New Year's, it's dark. All the shows are dark. And that's also when all the restaurant chefs test their new menus. So we flew to Vegas to eat. And we had reservations at Ariel, and that's the place that has the column in the center and all the wines that are in there. They're the wine angels that fly up and get it. And there are only like 3 other people in the restaurant. So when we told the waiter, like, we flew here from Michigan to eat, he's like, I'll be right back. And went to go tell the chef. And the chef came out and was like, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Would you care to sample some of the things I'm working on? I'm like, sign me up, yes. And we had the most glorious 3-hour-long dinner. And at the end, I had the chef sign the menu. And I stole a napkin, too, to put it on display. So when I got home, I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with these? And I had a really pretty serving tray. And I mounted the menu to the serving tray and then put the napkin on the bottom and made sure that his signature was there. And that hangs in the house as well. So when people say, why do you guys love to cook so much? Like, because we're willing to fly to Vegas for dinner. It is such a great story, being able to do all those tasting menus, just absolutely amazing. Now, I bet many of you are guilty of hanging on to greeting cards that are really important to you, and you shove them in a shoebox and they're under your bed somewhere. Probably. It's hard to throw those things away. So, many, many of them. This is a card that our dear friends who joined us in Hawaii when we renewed our vows on the beach. It was just magical and beautiful. And that's right after we found out that we couldn't have kids. And we just decided we renew our vows and it would just be us and it's fine. And then God was like, hold up, you get a baby after all. So it's just magical having that experience with our friends who could be there with us. And they gave us this card to say congratulations. And a couple months later, my friend passed away unexpectedly. But I still have that, and I honor her because I put it in a frame that's a seagrass because it reminds me of the texture of the beach. And every time I look at it, I get to think really happy things about that experience. So it's lovely to be able to tell the stories just through decor. Is it cool to have a bunch of mass-produced things, sprinkle them in there? Absolutely. Yeah, you can. But instead of having the giant canvas or wood sign that says eat in the kitchen, how about a menu from your favorite restaurant? Yeah. Instead of family, how about the magazine cover and something that allows you an opportunity to tell stories through that decor? Doesn't have to be every single piece, but a couple gets you a long way. All right. The structure of give. This last part, when I told you that the bonus would be hoping to make you better humans, and I'm sure everybody who's sitting in here today is already awesome, but I want to give you an opportunity of something that I learned recently. My husband and I met in middle school, and it's been 38 years. And last Tuesday was our 30th anniversary. And because we sort of grew up together and spent so much of our time trying to make each other better humans, it was nice to see the ways that our idea of give, like as a life philosophy, so give, when in doubt, give more. It wasn't just corny little tagline, like some people think my design is a democracy, not a dictatorship line is. But instead, it's a philosophy of thinking, if I have the time and the resources and the mental capacity and anything else that somebody else needs, I will give. And that's why we both mentor so much. As a professor and dean at Michigan State, Bill has mentored hundreds of students who then went on to mentor others. So that cycle of give continues. I had an opportunity, an unfortunate opportunity, because my husband was supposed to be here as well, teaching a class about AI. And in late April, he went out for a run and didn't come back. He had a heart attack and died instantly. So the idea of give became even more important after that. The unfortunate opportunity was watching the way that my community responded. 99% of them were amazing. They showed up absolutely fantastic. And I'm so very grateful to them. But what I learned in sort of a Maslow style that I tried to talk about with my friends after some of these experiences is that where I want to be and put my energy is at the tippy top of that Maslow chart, where everything that I have and everything I can give, I will. Give, when in doubt, give more. So I'll take you through these 4 sections of what I learned in my widowing. Give is where I want to be. The idea of give is that it's not transactional. You don't give with the expectation of any return. It's not a tit for tat kind of thing. It's I have the time and resources, I have the education, I have the knowledge that I can give you. We give because it makes the world a better place. If you are not capable of doing that, then what I found is the next level down is just where we exist. In my hometown, as I was little and following parents through the flipped houses, as we were out and about, I would watch the adults interact. And generally, it was something like, hey, how's it going? I'm getting by. I'm getting by. This is the plane of just existing. There's no net good or evil to it. It's just where some people are, and it's okay to be there. You can park there. Some people live their entire lives there, but they're doing neither harm nor good, so it's okay. The next level down, instead of give club, it's take club. And you'd think that would be the absolute opposite, but hold on. The idea of take club, think about for me the movie A Christmas Story. And Ralphie and his brother Randy, they run down the stairs Christmas morning and are so excited. And Randy, the little one, he runs up to the tree and is like, hey, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine. He was so excited because he just claimed them all, right? Take club is for the group of folks in that realm that think that they are owed everything. Like, well, I'm entitled to that, so I'm just going to take it. These are the folks that, like when they start out young as they're trick-or-treating, and if there's a bowl sitting out on the honor system, they will take the whole bowl because it's mine, I deserve it. Or these are the folks that will complain loudly about customer service and demand to see the manager. These are the folks that snap their fingers at waiters. Like, you need to serve me now because I'm entitled to it. And these are the folks who leave their grocery carts all willy-nilly in the lot, knowing that a strong wind could make a dent, right? This is take club. But the most insidious that I found, unfortunately, is grift club. When I was at a writing conference recently, I had an opportunity to talk to a gentleman who was telling a story about his grandmother. And he said, you know, a lot of people don't believe this or like how I grew up, but this gentleman's grandmother in the 90s was the head video production person for the Psychic Friends Network. And the grift of that caused a lot of people to go bankrupt, and it was unfortunate the damage that it did. So take club is just, I am entitled to it, right? But grift club, there's an ideology, there's a philosophy of it, and there is intent to do harm to those who are most vulnerable among us. I got to experience that a little bit with folks who showed up after husband died with expectation and intent. So now I'm making it my mission, along with democratic design, because I realized afterwards that give and that concept is what allowed me to create the whole philosophy of democratic design, because of course, I'm not going to take my knowledge and prevent other people from having it. I'm going to share it. Those who just exist, I'm going to smile at them a little bit more and tell them that they're doing a great job getting by and encourage them just to level up a little bit so that they can give. Takers, maybe one day they'll open their eyes, or if we say a kind word and pray for them, perhaps we can just bump them up to existing so that they will do no harm. The grifters, a little bit harder, a few more prayers. But the more we can surround ourselves with people who are in Give Club, the better examples that we are to others to make the world a better place and make grifting not as cool or not as available to those who are most vulnerable. Heavy thing to end on, but important. So, discovering your TNAT so that you can point to things now and say this, and see that pattern in your decor. You have your crap language now, so contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. And it's those balance with the Goldilocks that we want to keep about in the middle for great spaces. You know talc now, so you can smirk at all the Property Brothers shows and go, oh, I bet it's loud in there. You have your decor trifecta, so you can find your version of personalized decor that can tell stories about who you are, where you come from, and what you believe in. And hopefully after today, you can give just a little bit more. All right, there's a QR code if you would like to check out my website. All of the information and the decor trifecta, the fire test, the crap and talc language, that is all in there for you. So please have at it. I do have a couple of my books up here if you'd like to look through, and I'm more than happy to take questions about design, decor, any of the theories, anything else. Yes, sir.
Going back to your Property Brothers slide with the island in the kitchen, is there a way that you can calculate the lumens of the light fixtures in terms of their separation and their height off of the counter if you know what kind of brightness you want on a prep area? How do you know how far they need to be up and how far apart and what the lumens of the light has to be to give you the light that you need on your work surface without being either too dark or blowing you away?
Gotcha. So that's a fantastic question. And one thing I always like to do, especially in remodel or new build situations, because usually the builder does not put in enough light, or if they do, it's all cans in the ceiling, and it's not specifically targeted. So I always do a walkthrough with the electrician ahead of time, because I can come up with some pretty good plans, especially with the layers of lighting. But having the electrician's eye on it in order to make sure that there is the proper quantity and quality. So yes, there are some specific measurements, and there are consistent heights above the island in order to place those pendants. And it grows based on like the length of that. So if the island were like one stool shorter, you could probably get away with 2 pendants instead of 3. But if you look online, there are tons of resources from different like lighting institutes that give specific recommendations about the lumens per square foot based on whether it is task-oriented or like just ambient light and something where you're creating a mood as opposed to being able to see your food. That's a great question. Who else has a question for me? All good? Okay. Well, I'll take it back to the QR code screen one more time. If you have any other questions, feel free to come on up. Again, you're welcome to look at the books, and I have business cards here too if you have any other follow-up questions afterwards. It's been delightful. Thank you so very much.